Hello and welcome. I'm Eric Gao. You're watching Taiwan Plus, and here's what happened this week. On Monday, the presidential candidates drew their ballot numbers in a crucial final step ahead of January's elections. Here's Joyce Sun reporting from the Central Election Commission.
Taiwan's edging closer to picking who they want to see succeed President Tsai Ing-wen as she wraps up her maximum 2 terms in office. A lot of local media have shown up this morning at the Central Election Commission as the 3 presidential hopefuls pick their all-important candidate numbers for January's elections. That's essentially the order that their names will appear on the ballot. Different numbers mean different things here in Taiwan, with some considered to be luckier than others. And so how are these numbers picked? Well, by a customary lucky draw. Third-party runners Ko Wen-je and Cynthia Wu from the Taiwan People's Party have landed in slot 1, while the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's Lai Ching-te and Bi Kim-hsiao have drawn number 2. That makes main opposition Kuomintang's Hou You-yi and Zhao Xiaokang number 3. All 3 camps have said they are satisfied with their numbers, and now voters will see these numbers play out in their campaigns, whether that's victory number 2 or everything's okay number 3.
很高兴今天抽到美德双全稳定向前，代表着胜利的2号。
那1号是你最想要抽到的是，那今天有没有带一些什么就是比较幸运的东西？会相信这些吗？
哎，我跟你讲哦，我是蜥蜴人，没有很注重这种东西的，就是一个号码嘛，就给投票总要一个号码让他选的。
And though the international sphere will be looking to see how the 3 candidates manage self-ruled Taiwan's relationship with neighboring China, the Taiwanese people will be eager to see how the 3 will help on bread and butter issues that will affect daily life here, like housing and labor policies. Now, the next date to mark is December 30th, when the 3 hopefuls will get to put forth and defend their vision for Taiwan at the televised presidential debate. Joseph Wu and Joyce Sun in Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
And then on Friday, Taiwan's official presidential campaign period began. Louise Wan has this report.
Taiwan is entering its official election season. The Central Election Commission has just announced the names of the presidential and vice presidential candidates on the ballot. There's no surprises there, but Taiwan's 28-day official election campaign period kicks off now.
竞选活动的期间呢，将自112年的12月16日开始，一直到113年的1月12日为止。
That period means special rules are now starting. For example, any campaign material, whether that's banners, flags, or billboards, has to be marked clearly as promotional. Having to abide by those rules are the candidates from the 3 main parties. Lai Ching-te and Bi Kim-hsiao from the ruling DPP or Democratic Progressive Party, Hou You-yi and Zhao Xiaokang from the main opposition Kuomintang or KMT, and Ko Wen-je and his running mate Cynthia Wu from the 3rd party, the Taiwan People's Party. You may have thought that campaigning had been going on for months already in Taiwan's elections, but now it's set to ramp up as the candidates rally to convince Taiwan's 19.5 million eligible voters that they're the best on the ballot. Joseph Wu, Yu Chen Lai and Louise Watt at the Central Election Commission for Taiwan Plus.
China has been ramping up military activity around Taiwan in an apparent attempt to influence the upcoming elections. Jaime Okan has this update.
A report from Reuters is revealing that Taiwan's military had to fend off at least 4 attempts from China as it approached Taiwan's contiguous zone. Now that's 24 nautical miles from its coast. Unnamed officials told Reuters that it's part of a larger campaign by Beijing to try and sway voters ahead of the elections in January. Officials here in Taiwan say that those 4 attempts included a combination of weather balloons, fighter jets, and other commercial ships coming close to the country last month in an effort to intimidate voters. TaiwanPlus reached out to the Defense Ministry for a comment, but did not receive a response by the time of air. China claims Taiwan is part of its own and regularly operates military aircraft and warships around the country. But officials here are concerned that that activity is going to increase ahead of the elections on January 13th. Beijing says that when Taiwanese voters go to the polls, they're not just picking a candidate, they're picking between war and peace. But Taiwan says that China should respect its election process and will not be deterred. Eason Ten and Jaime Okan in Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
Fake accounts on social media are also being used to influence Taiwan's presidential vote. A report by research firm Graphica says these fake accounts can be found on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Their posts promote the opposition Kuomintang while criticizing the ruling Democratic Progressive Party. Now, the report could not identify who was behind this campaign, but said that these efforts are likely to increase before January's vote. To find out more about this report, Rick Lauert spoke to cybersecurity expert Lennon Chan of Deakin University.
Could you tell us what this new report by Graphica reveals about how disinformation is used in Taiwan?
Well, what's interesting about this report is that we start to see an increase of inauthentic accounts being used for disseminating disinformation and misinformation in Taiwan. So in old days, we see a lot of content farms, but in the past few years, we see this kind of inauthentic Facebook or other social media account that has been created for the purpose of disinformation and misinformation. Memes and illustrations are an easy way for people to absorb the information nowadays. We know, especially for younger generation, they are now really keen or interested in reading a whole report. So the memes become very, very effective in, I won't say swaying people's idea, but to plant a root, to plant a seed in people's mind when they are making their decision.
And the report doesn't say who is behind this action, but could you tell us a bit about what sort of actors are usually doing this type of disinformation, and also why it might be difficult to tell who is behind this action?
If you really look into this account, it's usually account with no content in it. It's not active. So the key issue is that how we'll be able to really trace back to understand who create all this account. It's actually very hard for us to really link what I usually call the last miles, link the account to the creators, or some people call it the first miles, the creators to the account. Those who are behind this account or the creation of the news are not usually at the front line. These accounts are used as a bolt or a springboard for dissemination of the disinformation or misinformation online.
This report also outlines what the intentions behind this sort of disinformation are. For example, they want to promote voting for one presidential candidate over another. Could you tell us how effective these sort of tactics are in swaying voters in Taiwan?
What I find interesting about this report is that it mentioned that all this account has been created are targeting two of the main parties who are running in the 2024 election. But we can obviously say it won't have great influence towards those core supporters of those two parties. The impact they try to generate is to have influence on those people who haven't made up their mind, or they don't have a very strong party aligned mentality.
That was Lennon Chan of Deakin University speaking to our reporter Rick Lauert. A man has been arrested for allegedly killing his bedridden mother. The case is drawing attention to the country's aging society and the hard time families have caring for sick relatives. John Van Trieste reports.
Police cart the body of a murdered 79-year-old woman out of her home. She'd been bedridden for 10 years after a stroke and was cared for by her son. The Tainan city government cut off her care services in August after her son hired a caregiver to help out. And this seems to have taken a toll. Police say her son stabbed her to death on Wednesday. He was found in a graveyard where he'd tried to kill himself. He's now being treated in hospital. Neighbors are in shock. But those who know the toll caring for sick relatives can take aren't surprised. In a country where nursing homes aren't the norm, the burden largely falls on patients' children. Even with a caregiver, things can be tough. This is especially true in the common situation where the caregiver is a newly arrived migrant worker, still learning the job and the language.
他其实需要跟原来的居家服务员要有衔接的时候，然后这个交接才有办法顺利。所以我觉得 台南的这一个案子，外籍看护来了，但是他还需要重新的学习，才有办法接手，这个都会让家庭照顾者形成额外的负担。
The rapid aging of Taiwan's population means that access to care services, already a pressing issue, is becoming urgent. The Health Ministry projects the number of people needing long-term care will hit 770,000 by 2026. That's a 38% jump from 2017. Meeting this need is a political issue, and in the final weeks before Taiwan's next election, it's getting more attention. The DPP's Lai Qingde wants to hire large numbers of caregivers and open new care homes. He wants companies to offer flexible hours for relatives who provide care themselves. The KMT's Ho Yo-yi wants long-term care insurance and more money for people with dementia. And TPP candidate Ko Wen-je wants a long-term care premium added to Taiwan's national health insurance. His plans include paying family members who provide care. And he'd stop the government from cutting off services to people with private caregivers, something that might have prevented Wednesday's murder. For hundreds of thousands across Taiwan, it will be critical that these pledges are kept and that the benefits reach ordinary people. Otherwise, this won't be the last family tragedy Taiwan will see. Joseph Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
A top Taiwanese tech firm is set to axe up to 100 of its workers before the end of the year. Panel maker Innolux says it is optimizing its operations. Innolux employs around 45,000 people worldwide. The staff hike comes despite Innolux's revenue jumping 7.8% this year. Economists say the layoffs are not a sign of financial trouble at the company.
AI 的一些发展趋势来看，我们其实生产线使用的人会减少，未来都是朝向这个近零碳排的部分嘛，所以他们必须在做生产线都必须要做一些调整。
A hospital in Bangkok is being investigated for refusing to treat a Taiwanese tourist who later died. Andy Chen was rushed to a private hospital after a suspected hit and run in the Thai capital on December 8th. Video shows a nurse shouting at paramedics to go somewhere else, afraid that this foreign patient might not be able to pay for treatment. Chen died from his injuries on the way to the nearest public hospital. Thai authorities say that this is not the first time the hospital has turned away severely injured patients. Volunteers are struggling to clean up a massive oil spill in northeastern Taiwan. Laurel Stewart went to Yilan County to find out more.
We're here in Yilan on Taiwan's east coast on what is a very ordinary beach. But if you look closely, the rocks here are all covered in thick, sticky oil. Now, it's something that the locals here discovered this morning, but it's actually an issue that's been afflicting the whole of the east coast for the past week. The oil spill originally came from the south near Taitung and Green Island, and it's been moving in the water northwards over the past week. Now, volunteers have come here to clean up the oil on the rocks, but if you look at how big this beach is, and this is just one of many along the east coast of Taiwan, they're moving in tiny increments along the rocks. Volunteers here are using these sheets to wipe off the oil from the rocks, and it's a very arduous process because it has to be done by hand and the oil is really thick. It comes off like this, but it still leaves remnants of the oil on the rocks. Now, they say there's not enough people doing this job. There's not enough time to prevent the oil coming in. It's still in the water and it's still moving northward, which means the oil is getting into the ecosystem, it's getting all over the rocks, it's in the fish, and they say there's not enough being done to understand the source of these problems coming in. Luffy Lee and Laurel Stewart in Yilan, Taiwan for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for joining us today for Here's What Happened. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. And before we go, get into the holiday spirit with one of Taipei's biggest shopping areas as it lights up for Christmas. I'm Eric Gao, and we'll see you next time.